As a general thing, a movie's opening weekend box office is indicative of how much hype there was for that movie at the time of opening, while the second weekend drop is indicative of how well or how poorly the audience responded to the movie over the course of the week that followed. The smaller the second weekend drop, the better for the movie, and vice versa. The absolute worst case scenario for any movie is an 80% drop, because that's so bad it's only happened a handful of times in Hollywood history. Yet that is what happened to Joker Folie. Deux. This is beyond embarrassing for all involved. How bad is it? Let's find out. The first Joker movie didn't technically need a sequel, but there were a number of ways a sequel could have gone. Some of those ways could have yielded another billion-dollar hit. We will never know. What we do know is that the direction that Todd Phillips went with did nothing but insult and offend the numerous fans of the original, so they stayed away already during the opening weekend, courtesy of a bunch of early leaks, and they stayed away in unprecedented numbers. And they kept staying away, so much so that in its second weekend, Folie à Deux not only got its ass handed to it by the animated robot movie, but by another clown, in the guise of the micro-budgeted Terrifier 3. Never mind the power of the Joker and DC brand for the moment, let's just look at the money spent. On one hand, we have Joker 2, a movie which cost $200 million to make. A lot of that is obviously cast salaries and various other administrative expenses, because there is no more $200 million on screen here than there was with Killers of the Flower Moon, but even so, the listed production budget is $200 million. On the other hand, we have Terrifier 3, a gore fest built on the word of mouth of the previous installments, and it has a listed budget of just $5 million. There is no way a movie like Joker 2 should be able to collapse so badly in its second weekend that it would end up behind Terrifier 3, yet that's exactly what happened. Terrifier 3 opened to $18 million. The Wild Robot in its third week pulled in almost $14 million, while Joker in its second week fell behind both of them and pulled in a mere $7 million. And that number is uncomfortably close to Beetlejuice Beetlejuice, which has already been out for 6 weeks and which is already out on streaming as well. And note that these are still just weekend estimates, as they do not yet have the Sunday actuals. Meaning there's a very good chance that by the time the final weekend numbers are in come Monday, Joker may actually have fallen behind Beetlejuice Beetlejuice as well. Keep in mind, this time last week, Warner were swearing up and down that Joker would open to $40 million, but the day after, the actuals revealed the final number to be a mere $37 million. It is not for me to suggest that Warner lied to save face when the weekend numbers were being reported, but it does look that way. The Hollywood Reporter also makes this observation, writing, Todd Phillips' Joker sequel is falling off a cliff in its second weekend, with an estimate just north of $7 million from 4,000 theaters, a historic decline of 81%. Until now, the Marvels held the record among comic book movies for the worst second weekend decline at 78%. Joker 2's fall is also nearly the worst drop in history for a film opening in more than 2,000 locations. Before we move on, remember that that $7 million figure comes from Warner, who this time last week overestimated Joker's opening weekend by $3 million, and they were the only ones that did that. That reminder out of the way, the Hollywood Reporter continues. Rival studios showed Joker 2 coming in closer to $6.7 million to $6.8 million, meaning it will come in fourth behind fellow Warner's holdover Beetlejuice Beetlejuice, which continues to flex its theatrical muscles even though it's now available in the home on premium video on demand. In other words, come Monday, Joker will, in all likelihood, have fallen behind Beetlejuice Beetlejuice. That's even more embarrassing than just falling behind Terrifier and that robot movie, which is still pretty embarrassing. As such, Deadline Hollywood focuses on who is to blame in their write-up, or rather, who is not to blame. They write, Warner Brothers' second weekend of Joker Folie Deux is posting an 81% freefall with 7 million in third place as per Warner Brothers this morning, that is Sunday morning. That's the absolute worst hold for a DC character in movie history of the brand on the big screen. Triple note, because they had 2 notes earlier, James Gunn and Peter Safran's DC Studios did not steer or shepherd Joker 2. Now, while they're not explicitly blaming Todd Phillips here, that is implied, because what Deadline Hollywood is doing here is clearing the heads of DC, James Gunn and Peter Safran, of any suspicion or accusations of any wrongdoing where Joker is concerned. That's good and well, but honestly, they are the ones most hurt by this. Even if they had nothing to do with Joker, the general audience doesn't know that. All the general audience saw was yet another atrociously bad comic book movie in a long line of atrociously bad comic book movies. And on top of that, you have atrociously bad Marvel content on Disney+, like Echo and Agatha All Along, both of which are unwatchable to all but the smallest of minorities. Making matters even worse, by all accounts, the next high-profile comic book movie to be released, Captain America 4, will be pretty darn atrocious as well, and so will Thunderbolts after that. By then, after all of that atrociousness, why would anyone be excited for James Gunn's Superman reboot, due out next summer? At that point, it's not even about whether that movie is good or bad. The issue is that after half a decade's worth of almost exclusively atrociously bad DEI-driven propagandistic comic book movie fare, why would anyone bother to check it out in the first place? A series of great comic book movies in a row may be a rising tide that floats all boats, but the opposite is true as well, something which makes Joker 2 destructive to not just a DC brand, but to comic book movies at large. But let's see what the remaining major trade is saying. Variety's headline reads Folie à Deux. Ouch. With the write-up proper reading, Joker Folie à Deux, which topped the box office last weekend, collapsed in third place with 7 million from 4,000 theaters. It could end up in fourth place, behind holdover Beetlejuice Beetlejuice once the final numbers are tallied on Monday. The offbeat comic book musical, starring Joaquin Phoenix as a reclusive stand-up comedian and part-time clown, suffered a tragic 82% decline in ticket sales from its already disastrous 37.6 million debut. It ranks as one of the biggest second weekend drops for the superhero genre, plunging more severely than last year's misfires of The Marvels, Ant-Man and the Wasp: Quantumania, Shazam! Fury of the Gods, and The Flash. So far, Folie à Deux has generated 51.6 million domestically and 165.3 million globally. The Warner Brothers film carries a hefty 200 million price tag, and at this rate will struggle to get anywhere near the 450 million needed to break even, according to sources familiar with the financials. Struggle is putting it mildly. The movie is collapsing not just in the US, but all over the world, so by the time all is said and done, it will be lucky to finish at 250 million worldwide, which means they're looking at a $200 million loss here. The far bigger loss, though, is if Joker contributes towards taking down next year's Superman reboot, and with it, Gunn's DC plans. Let me know your thoughts on that in the comments.